Ethan stepped off the small shuttle, his boots crunching against the jagged rocks of the alien world. The sky was a swirling mix of deep purples and faint green streaks, and lightning occasionally danced across the clouds. He squinted as the wind howled, carrying a strange scent that reminded him of burned metal and wet stone. This planet was known across the galaxy for its warriors, powerful, merciless, and skilled beyond measure. Yet, he had a purpose that made even fear seem small in comparison. In his hands, he carried the sword. It wasn't an ordinary weapon. Its metal shimmered with an inner glow that shifted between silver and gold. Strange symbols ran along the blade, and even from a distance, it seemed alive. Ethan had found it months ago in the wreckage of a fallen alien ship. At first, he thought it was just a tool. But the sword had chosen him in subtle ways, protecting him from harm, alerting him to danger, and occasionally vibrating as if urging him forward. He glanced at the fortress on the horizon, massive and unyielding. Towers of dark stone rose high, jagged and sharp against the stormy sky. Energy shields pulsed faintly over the walls, and Ethan knew that countless warriors were watching him even now. Kalira's fortress was considered impregnable, and she herself was said to be unmatched in battle. The stories spoke of her as a warrior queen whose mere glance could make seasoned fighters tremble. Ethan tightened his grip on the sword. "I don't want trouble," he whispered to himself, though the wind carried his words away. He adjusted the strap across his shoulder and began walking toward the gates. Every step felt heavier, as if the sword weighed more than its physical mass. As he approached, the ground vibrated beneath him. From the fortress emerged dozens of warriors, their armor shining with metallic blues and reds. Their weapons glinted in the dim light, energy blades humming as they took positions around him. Ethan stopped and held the sword out in both hands, not as a weapon, but as a gesture of respect. "I mean no harm," he called out. His voice steady despite the storm. The warriors didn't answer. They stared, analyzing him, muscles tensed and ready. One stepped forward, taller than the rest, with armor that seemed heavier and a helmet adorned with spikes. He raised a hand, signaling the others to hold. Ethan felt his heart beat faster, but he did not lower the sword. He had faced worse than alien warriors before, and he knew that hesitation now could cost more than pride it could cost his life. A sudden gust of wind swept over him, and the sword glowed faintly. Ethan flinched slightly, though he did not release it. He had seen this before, the sword responding to moments of danger or tension, almost as if it could sense the intentions of others. The taller warrior took a step back, eyes widening, as if surprised by the reaction. Then from the fortress gate a figure emerged. She walked with a grace that seemed effortless, yet every movement radiated strength. Her armor was unlike any Ethan had seen, sleek, dark, adorned with faint glowing lines that pulsed with energy. Her eyes were sharp, like a predator assessing her prey, but there was something more. She wasn't just a warrior. She was a queen among warriors. Kalira stopped a few meters from him. The warriors behind her shifted slightly, but no one stepped forward. Even in a world where strength ruled, there was respect in her silence. Ethan took a deep breath. "I believe this belongs to you," he said, holding out the sword. The moment his hand touched the hilt to offer it fully, a shock surged through him. Pain like fire burned up his arm, sharp but controlled, as if the sword itself was testing him. He gritted his teeth, but did not let go. The warriors gasped, stepping back, and Ethan realized something incredible. This was not a weapon meant to be held lightly. It had standards, rules, and now it had judged him worthy enough to endure its power without flinching. Kalira tilted her head slightly, observing him. She reached out her hand, and a faint glow connected her to the sword, linking her energy to his. It was subtle, but unmistakable. A bond was forming, one that neither she nor Ethan fully understood yet. Ethan's arm burned, but he stayed calm. "I only wish to return it," he said, his voice calm despite the pain. "I found it abandoned. I didn't know its power. I only wanted it back in your hands." Kalira's eyes narrowed slightly, then softened. She didn't take the sword from him immediately. Instead, she studied him, her expression unreadable. Whispers spread through her warriors. Humans were supposed to be weak, fragile, limited, and predictable. Yet here was one standing in the center of their fortress, holding her weapon, enduring its energy, and showing no fear. The taller warrior who had initially stepped forward looked at Clara and then at Ethan. His expression shifted from suspicion to awe. The human wasn't just strong. He was calm, focused, and seemingly connected to the sword in a way no alien had ever been. Clara finally stepped closer. "You feel it," she said quietly, almost to herself. "The sword chooses. It chooses only those worthy." Ethan nodded, lowering the sword slightly but not letting go. "I feel it," he admitted. "I don't know why, but I feel it." For a moment, the storm outside seemed to pause. The energy from the sword pulsed gently, illuminating their faces. Kalira's warriors remained frozen, unsure of how to act. They were trained to respond with precision and brutality. But this human had broken the unspoken rules. He hadn't attacked. Yet he had not been defeated either. Kalira moved closer, and the sword's glow intensified as if recognizing her presence as well. Ethan felt warmth travel up his arm, contrasting with the earlier burning sensation. He realized that the sword responded to harmony, respect, and courage. "You've been tested," Kalira said finally, "and you did not fail." She took a step back and glanced at her warriors. "Yet they are afraid," and rightly so. The warriors murmured unease in their voices. The tallest one finally dropped his weapon, and others followed, one by one. Fear had replaced their training. They had faced countless enemies in their lives. But none had withstood the sword, and none had survived its energy without harm. Yet this human was unharmed, calm, and respectful. Ethan's eyes widened slightly as he watched them flee. I didn't expect this," he said softly. Kalira studied him, then nodded. "Humans," she said thoughtfully. "They are." Remarkable. Wind picked up again, whipping around the fortress, but Ethan felt a strange calm settle over him. He had not only survived the approach to the queen, but had also earned her attention. He did not yet understand why the sword had chosen him, or what this connection meant. But he knew one thing. This was only the beginning. Kalira sheathed her own blade and stepped closer. "Come," she said. "You will not leave yet. There are questions to answer, and lessons to learn." Ethan followed her, still holding the sword. Each step he took through the fortress corridors felt heavy with history and power. Statues of past warriors lined the walls, their eyes seeming to follow him. He realized that he was walking through a place where courage, skill, and honor were tested daily, but he also sensed that the sword had already chosen him as someone who could belong here. Someone who could change things in ways even the queen had not imagined. At the center of the fortress, in a room glowing with faint energy, Kalira finally motioned for him to stop. "Tell me," she said. "Why did you take the sword from the ship? Why did you touch it?" Ethan lowered the weapon carefully. "I didn't take it for power," he said. "I only wanted it safe. I didn't want anyone to use it for wrong reasons. I felt it was important to return it to you." Kalira studied him for a long moment. Then she smiled faintly, a rare and guarded expression. "Few humans are so honorable," she said, "and few would have the courage to face what you just faced." Ethan felt a small weight lift from his shoulders. He had not come for glory, and he had not sought recognition, but it seemed the universe had other plans. The sword's glow dimmed slightly, as if acknowledging that the trial was over. Yet deep inside, Ethan knew this was just the first step of something far larger than either he or Kalira could yet understand. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside the fortress, a quiet tension hung in the air. Kalira's warriors remained cautious, but respectful, and Ethan felt the first stirrings of an alliance that could change not only this world, but many worlds beyond. And so, the human who had arrived alone, holding a mysterious alien sword, began a journey that would test courage, honor, and the power of unity in ways the galaxy had never seen. Ethan followed Kalira deeper into the fortress. The walls glowed faintly with energy, illuminating corridors filled with tapestries that depicted battles and victories from centuries past. Each step echoed, Yet the sound seemed swallowed by the fortress itself. As if the place was alive and aware of their presence, Kellera led him to a wide chamber at the heart of the fortress. The floor was smooth black stone, reflecting the faint light of the energy crystals embedded in the walls. In the center of the room, a platform rose slightly, engraved with symbols similar to those on the sword. Ethan felt a familiar warmth in his hand as he held the weapon, as if the sword recognized the markings. "This place," Ethan whispered, scanning the room. "It feels alive," Kellera nodded. "It is," she said. "The fortress is more than stone and metal. It responds to power, to intent. Those who enter with dishonesty or fear rarely leave. You are different." Ethan felt a flush of pride, but pushed it aside. "I didn't come here to prove anything. I only wanted to return the sword." Kellera studied him closely. "And yet, by returning it, you have proven more than most warriors could ever hope to. Few could endure its test and remain unshaken. That is why my warriors feared you. Not because of your strength alone, but because you did not seek to dominate. You acted with respect." Ethan's gaze fell on the sword. The burn he had felt earlier had faded, leaving a tingling warmth. "I still don't understand it," he admitted. "Why me? Why did it choose me?" Kellera's eyes softened, a rare expression on a warrior trained to conceal every emotion. "Some weapons are not tools. They are guides, meant to reveal qualities the wielder may not yet know they possess. This sword, it is ancient. It recognizes courage, focus, and purity of intent. You have all three, even if you do not yet realize it." Before Ethan could respond, a sudden vibration ran through the chamber. The sword pulsed violently, its glow brighter than before. Ethan instinctively tightened his grip, bracing himself. From the corridors outside, he heard the clanging of armor, and shouting Kellera's warriors were reacting to the sword's surge. Kellera's expression remained calm, but her eyes narrowed. "They sense it," she said. "The sword is not only testing you, it is revealing itself to all who are near. Watch." Ethan stepped onto the platform as instructed. The moment his feet touched the stone, the sword's energy expanded, forming a faint aura around him. He could feel the power surging, flowing like water through every vein in his body. Then Kellera did something unexpected. She drew her own blade and stepped onto the platform beside him. The air around them shimmered. And for the first time, Ethan saw the sword respond to another presence. Kellera's energy intertwined with his, creating a connection that neither fully understood. A soft hum filled the room, vibrating through the stone floor and into their bones. Kellera's voice was steady. "The sword recognizes not just strength, but unity. It will not serve those who act alone. Its power is greatest when the wielder is aligned with purpose, guided by respect for life and balance." Ethan nodded, feeling a surge of understanding. "Then it's not just a weapon. It's a test and a guide." Kellera smiled faintly. "Yes, and it has judged you worthy. But there is more you must learn. Power without understanding is dangerous. Many have fallen not to enemies, but to their own pride." Before Ethan could reply, a loud crash echoed from the main gate. Alarms blared, and Kellera's warriors rushed to their positions. The air outside was thick with the smell of smoke and ozone. Through the fortress's energy shields, Ethan could see a small fleet approaching, a band of heavily armed ships, piloted by a faction known for raiding weaker worlds. Kellera's eyes hardened. "They come for the sword," she said. "And for me, it seems your arrival has not gone unnoticed." Ethan felt a twinge of apprehension, but gripped the sword firmly. "Then I'll fight," he said. "If it's the sword or your people at risk, I won't stand aside." Kellera studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Very well. But you must understand the sword is not a tool for brute force. Let it guide your actions, and it will protect you. Misuse it, and even the strongest could be destroyed." Ethan swallowed hard but remained determined. "I understand." The fortress erupted into motion. Kellera's warriors took positions along the walls and towers, his energy weapons humming as they prepared for the incoming ships. Ethan followed her, moving with surprising agility despite the weight of his armor and the sword. As they reached a strategic overlook, the first of the enemy ships came into view. They were sleek and black, designed for speed and destruction. Each ship bristled with weapons, and Ethan could feel the intensity of their approach. The enemy pilots had likely heard of Kyalira's power, but they underestimated the connection between the human and the sword. Kyalira gestured to the platform's edge. "Stand beside me," she said. "Let the sword guide you. Do not act rashly. Let it flow through you." Ethan raised the sword, feeling the energy resonate with him. The pain he had felt earlier was gone, replaced by a focused warmth. The sword's glow expanded, forming a protective aura around them both. When the enemy ships fired, energy beams struck the aura and fizzled harmlessly against it. Ethan's eyes widened. The sword was not just defensive, it could manipulate energy, redirect attacks, and shield those near it. Kalira's warriors watched in awe as Ethan moved instinctively, guiding the sword to absorb and reflect the incoming fire. The enemy pilots hesitated, confused by the sudden failure of their weapons. They were trained to destroy, but this human, wielding a weapon beyond their understanding, changed the rules entirely. One ship tried a direct strike, diving toward the fortress. Ethan raised the sword, and a concentrated beam of energy shot forward, striking the ship's hull. Sparks and flames erupted, and the ship spun out of control, crashing into the jagged cliffs below. The other ships faltered, fear creeping into their maneuvers. Kalira's warriors murmured among themselves. This was more than skill, it was instinct, courage, and something they had never seen in humans before. They began to rally, taking new positions. Inspired by the human who had tamed the sword's power, Ethan's movements were precise, almost like a dance. The sword responded to his intentions as he deflected energy blasts, created shields, and even projected bursts of force to repel the attacking ships. Each action was guided by Kylira's commands and the sword's subtle influence. Finally, enemy ships began to retreat, their confidence shattered. The sight of the human and the sword had turned fear into a weapon, and no pilot wished to test it further. Kylira's warriors cheered quietly, some dropping to their knees in relief and respect. Ethan lowered the sword, panting but composed. As the glow dimmed and settled back into a soft hum, Kylira turned to him, her expression unreadable, but her voice firm. "You did well. You acted with wisdom and courage, and you controlled the sword rather than letting it control you." Ethan nodded. "I couldn't have done it without your guidance. And the sword itself? It felt alive, like it knew what to do." Kylira studied him closely. "And now it recognizes you not just as its wielder, but as a protector of this world. My warriors will need time to understand, but they will follow you. The sword has chosen, and that choice cannot be ignored." Ethan felt a mix of pride and responsibility. He had not sought this power, nor had he asked for recognition. Yet now he was bound to the sword, to Kylira, and to the protection of a world far beyond his own. Kylira finally sheathed her weapon and gestured for him to follow. "Come, there is more to learn, and soon the threats will grow stronger. The sword is not just a shield, it is a key to something greater. But you must understand its limits, its strengths, and its demands." Ethan followed her through the corridors, the weight of his new responsibilities settling over him. The fortress no longer felt like a place of fear. It felt like the beginning of a journey, one that would test courage, wisdom, and the bond between human and alien in ways no one could have predicted. And as he walked beside Kylira, holding the sword that had burned his hand but now felt like an extension of himself, Ethan knew that he was ready. The real test had just begun. The morning after the attack, the fortress was unusually quiet. Ethan walked beside Kylira through the upper corridors, the sword resting in his hands. The weapon no longer burned him, but its subtle hum reminded him that it was alive, aware, and waiting. Outside, the storm had passed, leaving streaks of orange and purple light across the jagged horizon. The alien world looked both beautiful and dangerous, a perfect reflection of the challenge he had agreed to face. Kylira led him to a large training hall at the heart of the fortress. Its ceiling was high, reinforced with energy shields. The floor was engraved with concentric circles and symbols that glowed faintly. Warriors were already present, some practicing formations, others testing their weapons against floating energy drones. When they saw Ethan enter, the hall fell silent. Even seasoned fighters recognized the human who had controlled the sword. Whispers spread quickly through the room, a mixture of awe, curiosity, and fear. Ethan lowered his head slightly, acknowledging them. "I didn't come to scare anyone," he said quietly. "I just want to learn." Kalira's voice rang out clearly over the murmurs. "Silence. He has earned your respect. Watch and learn, for he will teach you more than any book or drill." Ethan felt the weight of responsibility settle on him. He had expected Kalira to train him, but now he realized he would also be guiding her warriors. He stepped onto the central platform, sword in hand, and felt the energy pulsing through the hall. The sword seemed to react to the presence of the warriors. Sensing their intentions, their fears, and their readiness, Kalira stood beside him, her blade drawn. "First lesson," she said, "control, not force. The sword protects those who respect its power. Strike only when necessary, and act with purpose." Ethan nodded. "Understood." Kalira motioned to the closest warrior. The human stepped forward hesitantly, his energy blade drawn. Ethan raised the sword slightly, creating a faint barrier between them. The warrior swung, testing his skill. But the sword's energy met the strike and reflected it without harming either of them. Ethan adjusted his stance, moving fluidly with the weapon. Letting the sword guide his actions, the hall erupted in quiet gasps. No human had ever handled the sword before, and yet Ethan moved naturally, instinctively. It's like he and the weapon had been made for each other. The warrior tried another strike, faster this time, but Ethan blocked, deflected, and redirected the energy harmlessly. Kalira's eyes glimmered with approval. "See how he moves with the weapon rather than against it? That is the difference between a fighter and a master. You will all learn from him." One by one, the warriors stepped forward. Some were cautious, hesitant to challenge a human, while others were eager, curious about the energy sword's power. Ethan faced them all, guiding their attacks, teaching timing, and showing how to harmonize with energy rather than rely purely on brute strength. Hours passed, and by midday, the training hall was filled with a rhythm of motion and understanding. Kalira watched silently, observing both Ethan and her warriors. She had trained thousands in her life, yet she could see a change happening before her eyes. The human was not just surviving the sword's power, he was teaching it, showing the warriors a way to respect and control energy rather than fear it. After a break, Kalira spoke. "You have impressed them, Ethan, but the sword's test is not complete. Its purpose is not training alone. It senses danger and danger approaches. Soon you will need more than skilloo. We'll need strategy, courage, and unity." Ethan listened carefully. He had expected a challenge, but Kalira's words carried a weight that made him sit straighter. "What kind of danger?" he asked. Kalira's expression darkened. "A warlord from the neighboring systems seeks this world. He knows of the sword and believes it will grant him unmatched power. He is ruthless, and his armies are vast. You were chosen, Ethan, because the sword sensed your strength, your focus, and your courage. You are part of what will stop him." Ethan's mind raced. He had fought enemies before, but a warlord with an entire army was a different kind of challenge. "Then we need a plan," he said. "We can't just fight blindly." Kalira nodded. "Exactly. We will combine your instincts with our strategies. The sword will guide your actions, but we must also guide our warriors. If we fail, this world falls, and the sword may be lost to destruction or misuse." Ethan felt a surge of determination. "Then let's start immediately. I want to understand how the sword can help in battle, and I want to prepare the warriors." Kalira led him to the strategy chamber, a circular room with a holographic display of the planet and surrounding systems. The terrain was mapped in detail, and markers indicated locations of resources, fortresses, and enemy positions. Ethan studied the display carefully, noting the approach routes the warlord could take. "The sword reacts to intent," Kalira said. but strategy is still needed. You cannot rely on instinct alone when facing thousands. Ethan placed the sword on the table, its glow illuminating the map. We'll need to control the choke points, he said, pointing to narrow valleys and mountain passes. The enemy can't bring their full force here. We can guide them into positions where our warriors can strike effectively, while the sword handles immediate threats. Kalira studied the plan. Good. But the warlord will adapt quickly. We must also have flexibility, and that requires your leadership. The warriors will look to you now, not just for the sword, but for guidance. Ethan felt a mixture of pride and responsibility. He had not expected to command alien warriors, yet the sword's presence made him feel connected, almost as if it whispered suggestions and warnings. He picked up the sword again and held it firmly. Then I will lead. I don't know everything, but I will do my best. Kalira placed a hand on his shoulder. That is all anyone can ask. Over the next several days, Ethan trained with the warriors constantly. He taught them to move in patterns that complemented the sword's energy, to watch for subtle cues from their surroundings and to trust the human leading them. Some warriors were skeptical at first, but when they saw the sword protect Ethan from accidents or guide his movements, their doubts faded. Kalira observed silently, impressed by how quickly the warriors adapted. She had expected resistance. After all, humans were not considered capable of matching her people's skill. Yet Ethan's combination of humility, courage, and instinct inspired loyalty. Then, one evening, a scout returned with urgent news. Warlord's fleet approaching. They will arrive by dawn. Clara's eyes narrowed. We have little time. Ethan, you will position the sword and our best warriors at the mountain pass near the eastern valley. This is where the enemy will be most vulnerable. Ethan nodded, feeling the familiar warmth of the sword in his hand. I understand. Let's move immediately. As they reached the pass, Ethan felt the sword's energy intensify. It pulsed as if aware of the approaching threat. The wind picked up, swirling around the mountains, carrying the faint hum of energy from the sword. Ethan positioned the warriors carefully, placing energy shields, traps, and ambush points. Kalira stood beside him, her blade ready. The sword will guide you, she said, but your decisions will determine the outcome. Trust your instincts, Ethan. Trust the sword. Trust yourself. The night passed with tension thick in the air. Ethan could hear the distant hum of the warlord's fleet, feel the anticipation among the warriors, and sense the sword's subtle warnings. When the first ships appeared on the horizon, Ethan held the weapon high, ready to act. The enemy ships descended into the valley, confident in their numbers. Ethan's heart pounded, but he remained calm, letting the sword guide his actions. As the ships advanced, he released a wave of energy from the sword, not to destroy, but to control. The enemy pilots struggled as the sword manipulated their attacks, deflecting beams harmlessly into the mountains and causing confusion among their ranks. Kalira's warriors struck strategically, using the openings created by the sword. The warlord's army, powerful as it was, faltered against the combined force of human instinct, alien strategy, and the sword's energy. Ethan realized something crucial. The sword did not just protect it, inspired. Those around it moved faster, thought quicker, and acted with courage beyond their usual limits. His role was clear. He was not just a wielder, but a guide, a leader, a bridge between human ingenuity and alien power. As the first wave of enemy ships was repelled, Ethan felt a surge of confidence. The real battle was only beginning, but for the first time, he understood that humans were not weak. With courage, intelligence, and heart, they could stand beside the greatest warriors in the galaxy and sometimes even lead them. The first light of dawn stretched across the jagged peaks, illuminating the valley where Ethan and Kalira had positioned themselves. The air was sharp and cold, carrying the distant hum of approaching enemy ships. Ethan adjusted his grip on the sword, feeling its energy pulse with anticipation. The weapon's glow was stronger than ever. As if aware of the gravity of the battle to come, Kalira stood beside him, her eyes scanning the horizon. They are coming faster than expected, she said. The warlord knows we are prepared, but he underestimates the bond you share with the sword. Ethan nodded, feeling the warmth of the blade. Then we'll give him a reason to rethink that. The first wave of ships appeared over the ridge, sleek and dark, their weapons gleaming in the morning light. Ethan's warriors tensed, ready to strike at a moment's notice. Kalira raised her hand and a wave of energy from the fortress shielded them from the initial bombardment. Sparks flew as beams collided with the shields, but the defenders remained unharmed. Ethan stepped forward, sword raised. He felt the energy respond to his intent, expanding outward in a protective aura that enveloped the warriors behind him. The sword did more than block, it guided, it redirected, and it inspired. The warriors moved with fluidity, striking with precision and confidence they had never shown before. Kalira watched carefully. "Remember, Ethan," she said, her voice steady, "the sword is not a weapon of destruction alone. It reacts to intent. You can control the battlefield without unnecessary harm." Ethan nodded. He focused, letting the sword flow with his thoughts. When the first enemy ship descended toward the valley floor, he extended the blade forward. A beam of concentrated energy shot from the sword, striking the ship's hull. Sparks and flames erupted, and the craft spiraled out of control, crashing into the rocks below. The enemy pilots hesitated, confusion spreading through their ranks. Kalira's warriors moved swiftly, striking the disoriented ships with precision attacks. Ethan's heart pounded, but he remained calm, letting instinct and the sword guide him. Another ship swooped down, its energy beams aimed at the defenders. Ethan shifted the sword, creating a barrier that absorbed the blasts and reflected them into the nearby cliffside. The sound of metal and energy colliding echoed through the valley. The warlord's forces were powerful, but they were not prepared for a human wielding the ancient sword. Each strike Ethan made seemed effortless, each movement calculated yet instinctive. The sword responded to his focus, amplifying his intentions and protecting those around him. Kalira fought beside him, her blade striking with precision, each movement harmonizing with Ethan's actions. Together, they formed a seamless, pair-human instinct and alien skill, working in perfect unison. The warriors, inspired by their leaders, fought with courage and determination, turning fear into strength. As the battle continued, Ethan noticed a shift in the sword's energy. It pulsed differently, reacting not just to the immediate danger, but to the warlord himself. He felt a strange resonance, as if the sword recognized the enemy's intentions before they were acted upon. Kalira glanced at him. It senses him. The warlord is strong, but the sword responds to those who act with purpose. Remember, control and clarity are your allies. Ethan focused, feeling the connection deepen. The enemy ships were clever, attempting to surround them and strike from unexpected angles. Yet the sword guided his movements with perfect timing, deflecting attacks and protecting the warriors. Each wave of assault was met with precise counters, and slowly, the warlord's fleet began to falter. From his vantage point, Ethan saw the warlord approaching in a larger, heavily armored ship. Its presence radiated authority and danger. He could feel the sword's energy spike, responding to the enemy commander's strength. Ethan's pulse quickened, but he did not waver. The sword's hum grew steady, a reassuring presence that bolstered his courage. Kalira's voice broke through his concentration. "Prepare yourself. The warlord will attempt to take the sword directly. He underestimates you, but he will learn quickly." The warlord's ship descended toward the valley, energy shields shimmering. Soldiers aboard leaped from their craft, weapons drawn, intending to land and seize the sword by force. Ethan stepped forward, sword raised, energy flaring around him. The moment the enemy touched the ground, the sword reacted, sending a wave of force that knocked them off their feet. The warriors behind him pressed forward, taking advantage of the disarray. Ethan's instincts guided his movements: strike, block, redirect, protect. The sword's power flowed through him, but it did not act alone. His mind and focus were part of its force. Kalira moved alongside him, striking with precision, her energy blade cutting through the enemy ranks. Together, they formed a barrier that the warlord's soldiers could not penetrate. The human's presence, combined with the sword, had turned the tide of the battle. From above, the warlord's ship fired powerful beams, attempting to break their defenses. Ethan shifted the sword, creating a shield that absorbed the energy and reflected it into the rocky terrain. The impact sent rocks flying, creating obstacles for the remaining enemy soldiers. The warlord's confidence faltered as he witnessed the humans' control over the ancient weapon. Kalira's warriors pressed, the advantage inspired by Ethan's courage and skill. What had begun as fear now became determination. They fought with precision, moving in harmony with the sword's energy, and slowly, the enemy forces began to retreat. The warlord, realizing his ground troops were failing, descended in his command ship, attempting a direct assault. Ethan felt the sword's energy spike again, resonating with the enemy leader's presence. He raised the blade, channeling focus and intent, letting the sword guide his actions. With a sudden burst of energy, the sword projected a wave that disrupted the warlord's ship systems. Sparks flew from the hull, engines faltered, and the craft veered dangerously close to the cliffs. Kalira seized the moment, striking with her blade to force the enemy to retreat further. Ethan felt the sword vibrate in response, almost as if it was approving the teamwork. The energy around him shimmered, protecting the warriors and creating a zone where the enemy could not penetrate. Each strike he made was precise, measured, and controlled not for destruction, but for defense and guidance. The warlord's forces, now demoralized, began to withdraw. Ethan and Kalira pressed forward, not in pursuit of destruction, but to secure the valley and ensure no threat remained. The sword's glow gradually softened, returning to a steady hum as the immediate danger passed. Kalira lowered her blade, her expression a mixture of relief and admiration. "You have done well, Ethan," she said. "The sword recognized your courage and wisdom. It responded not just to strength, but to your heart." Ethan exhaled, feeling the tension drained from his body. "I couldn't have done it alone," he replied. "The sword and your guidance made this possible." Kalira nodded. Humans are underestimated across the galaxy, but courage, focus, and clarity can turn the impossible into reality. Today, you have proven that. The warriors, once fearful of the human, now approached him with respect. Some bowed slightly, others simply nodded, acknowledging his skill and leadership. The sword had not only protected them, but it had also inspired loyalty and courage that no words could have conveyed. Ethan looked at the valley, now quiet, except for the remnants of the battle. The enemy ships had fled, their confidence shattered. He felt a connection to the sword stronger than ever, a bond that went beyond weapon and wielder. It was as if the sword and he shared understanding, purpose, and trust. Kalira placed a hand on his shoulder. "The warlord will return," she said quietly. "Stronger, more prepared. But today, you have changed the course of this battle. Your courage has inspired not just me, but all of those who fight beside us." Ethan nodded, feeling a mixture of pride and responsibility. "Then we prepare," he said. "We strengthen our defenses, train the warriors, and ensure that the sword's power is used wisely." Kalira smiled faintly, her eyes glimmering with approval. "Exactly. The sword chose you for a reason, Ethan. And now, together, we will protect this world and perhaps much more beyond it." As the sun rose higher, casting light across the valley, Ethan held the sword firmly. Its energy pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat, a reminder of the bond they shared. He knew the battle was far from over, but for the first time, he understood that humans were not just survivors. They could lead, inspire, and change the course of events in a galaxy that had long underestimated them. And so, with Kalira by his side and the sword in his hands, Ethan prepared for the challenges ahead, ready to face any enemy, any threat, and any test of courage, wisdom, and heart. The bond between human and weapon had proven its strength, and the future awaited their next move. The sun had set, casting long shadows across the valley. The air was tense, filled with anticipation. Ethan stood at the edge of the cliff, the sword glowing softly in his hands. Kalira stood beside him, her eyes scanning the horizon. The warlord had returned, larger, stronger, and more determined than before. His fleet gleamed under the fading light, engines humming like a swarm of predatory insects. Ethan could feel the sword's energy pulse in rhythm. It's his own heartbeat. The weapon had been his guide, his protector. And now it was more than that. It was a bond alive with purpose. Every movement he had made in training, every strike in battle, had prepared him for this moment. Kalira's voice broke the silence. This is the final confrontation, Ethan. The warlord seeks the sword's power. If he succeeds, countless lives will be lost. We cannot let that happen, Ethan nodded, gripping the sword tightly. We won't let him. Not now. Not ever. The enemy fleet descended into the valley with precision, energy beams firing in calculated patterns. Ethan stepped forward, letting the sword's energy expand outward in a protective aura. The first waves of attack were absorbed, redirected harmlessly into the mountains. The warlord's forces faltered, confusion spreading among them. Kalira moved alongside him, striking with her blade to disable incoming ships. Together, human instinct and alien precision created a seamless defense. The warriors in the valley followed, inspired and coordinated, striking with timing and skill. Every attack, every defense was guided by Ethan's connection with the sword. The warlord's flagship hovered above the battlefield. Ethan could sense the enemy commander's intent, arrogance, strength, and a desire to dominate. The sword pulsed violently, reacting to the presence of such focused power. Ethan felt the hum resonate through his chest, as if the weapon was telling him to prepare for a challenge unlike any before. Kalira's eyes met his. "This is it," she said. "The sword's full potential will be tested. Trust yourself, trust it, and trust us." Ethan drew a deep breath. The sword glowed brighter, energy radiating outward, forming a protective dome over the warriors. He felt clarity, focus, and courage combine into one steady determination. The first of the warlord's elite soldiers leaped from the flagship, landing with deadly precision. Ethan met them head-on, the sword moving with uncanny speed and control. Every strike, block, and parry was guided by both instinct and purpose. The enemy soldiers were skilled, but they underestimated the bond between human and sword. Each attempt to overpower him failed as the sword guided Ethan's movements, countering attacks and protecting his allies. The warriors pressed forward, striking with precision and confidence. Emboldened by Ethan's control, from above the warlord watched, his expression darkening. He descended in his command ship, closing the distance with speed and authority. Ethan could feel the sword's energy spiked violently, recognizing the challenge. The warlord's presence radiated power. But the sword's connection with Ethan remained stronger. Pulsing with calm focus and controlled force, Kalira stepped forward. "This is your fight," she said. "We will hold the others, but the final strike requires you and the sword." Ethan nodded, feeling a mixture of fear and resolve. The warlord's ship descended rapidly, energy beams slicing the air. Ethan held the sword high, its glow intensifying. The energy around him expanded, forming a shield that absorbed the first wave of attacks and redirected them with precision. The warlord's ship landed, heavily in the valley, creating tremors that shook the ground. Soldiers poured out, aiming to overwhelm the defenders. Ethan stepped forward, sword raised, energy flaring around him. Every movement was precise, every strike controlled. The sword seemed to anticipate his thoughts, guiding his actions and protecting those around him. Kalira's warriors created a perimeter, holding off the enemy's remaining forces. Ethan focused entirely on the warlord, feeling the hum of the sword grow louder, almost as if it were speaking to him. The blade pulsed with power, resonating with his courage and clarity. The warlord stepped forward, his own weapon crackling with energy. He swung with strength and precision, aiming to strike Ethan down. The human met the attack, the sword deflecting the blow and sending a shockwave through the ground. Rocks and debris flew in all directions, yet Ethan remained steady. His focus unwavering, the two leaders clashed repeatedly, strikes echoing through the valley. The sword's energy flared with each impact, illuminating the battlefield. Ethan realized something vital. The sword amplified not just strength, but intent. It responded to his clarity, his courage, and his desire to protect. The warlord's brute force alone could not overcome it. Kalira shouted, directing her warriors to strategic positions. "Focus on the shields. Protect the flanks. Keep the enemy from surrounding him. Ethan nodded, trusting both the sword and Kalira's commands. He stepped forward, using the weapon's energy to create a controlled wave that knocked the warlord off balance. The elite soldiers fell back, hesitant to approach as the sword pulsed and expanded. Ethan pressed the advantage, striking with precision and purpose. The warlord stumbled, momentarily shocked by the human's control and the sword's energy. Ethan seized the moment, moving with fluidity and confidence. He guided the sword with focus, redirecting the enemy's energy attacks harmlessly into the valley walls. Every strike, every block, was perfect an extension of his intent. Finally, the warlord attempted one last desperate attack, a surge of energy meant to overwhelm Ethan completely. The sword pulsed violently, recognizing the danger. Ethan held his ground, focusing entirely on clarity and purpose. The blade responded, channeling all the energy back toward the enemy. The warlord's attack was absorbed, reflected, and returned with controlled force. His ship shuddered under the energy, systems failing. Soldiers fell back, realizing their commander's strength alone could not win. The sword's energy, guided by Ethan's clarity and courage, had turned their own power against them. Kalira moved forward, striking with precision to ensure the warlord's defeat. The command ship, unable to withstand the energy wave, retreated, leaving the valley in silence. Ethan lowered the sword, feeling its energy settle into a calm hum. The warriors cheered, inspired, and relieved. The threat was gone for now. Kalira placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "You have done more than survive," she said. "You have led, protected, and inspired. The sword recognized not just your strength, but your heart." Ethan looked around at the warriors. They approached him, some bowing, others nodding, acknowledging his courage and skill. He realized something profound. The sword had chosen him not merely as a wielder, but as a leader, a guide, and a protector. The valley was quiet now, the echoes of battle fading. Ethan held the sword firmly, feeling its energy pulse gently. Kalira's warriors gathered around, offering respect and loyalty. They had seen a human face impossible odds, guided by a weapon ancient and alive. And they had witnessed courage beyond measure. Kalira's voice broke the quiet. "The warlord will return someday, stronger and wiser. But today, Ethan, you have changed the course of events. You have proven that humans, when guided by courage, clarity, and purpose, can stand beside any warrior in the galaxy." Ethan felt a swell of pride, but also responsibility. "Then we prepare," he said. "We train, we protect, and we ensure the sword is never misused. This power is not just for battle, it is for guidance and protection." Kalira smiled faintly. "Exactly. The sword chose you, Ethan, because you were worthy. You have proven that humans are not to be underestimated. Your courage, focus, and clarity have made history today." Ethan looked out across the valley, the sun rising over distant mountains. The sword pulsed softly in his hands, a reminder of the bond they shared. He knew the battle had ended, but the journey was far from over. There would be more threats, more challenges, and more tests of courage and wisdom. But for the first time, he understood the truth of the sword's message. Power was not merely strength, it was clarity, courage, and purpose. With those qualities, even a human could face the greatest challenges and inspire warriors across worlds. Kalira stepped beside him, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder. "The sword has guided you well. The warriors have followed, and the world is safe. But remember this, Ethan, leadership is not just about power. It is about courage, clarity, and the willingness to act when others cannot." Ethan nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He had faced the impossible, tamed an ancient weapon, and led a group of alien warriors to victory. Yet he knew the true journey was not over. The sword had chosen him, and with it, he had a responsibility, not just to protect, but to guide, inspire, and uphold the values it represented. As the valley filled with light, Ethan raised the sword one last time. Its glow reflected the rising sun, a symbol of hope, courage, and unity. Kalira and the warriors stood beside him, and for the first time, He truly understood that humans could stand as equals among the greatest warriors of the galaxy. And so, with the sword in his hands, courage in his heart, and Kalira by his side, Ethan prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The warlord had been defeated, but the story of the human and the sword would echo across worlds, a testament to the power of courage, clarity, and purpose.